A policy illustration is not a policy contract. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's installation in our EncycloMedia series, we're going to discuss policy illustrations. Now here on the channel, we talk about whole life insurance from mutual companies that pay dividends. So when we address policy illustrations, it's going to be for that purpose of becoming your own banker, implementing the infinite banking concept as described in R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. So let's start by saying that a policy illustration is just that. It's an illustration. It is an example. It is a visual. It's a snapshot in time. James Nethery says that it's wrong from the moment that you print it. But it is a collection of numbers, and it will clearly say on the policy illustration. A policy illustration is not a policy contract. Also, and this is important, I have shared policy illustrations with folks that are coming through my process that are vetting this idea of becoming their own bankers. We get to a point in our process, it's not at the start, where we look at policy illustrations together, and I'm guiding and answering questions and we're looking at it together. It has its place. You need to know though that the policy illustration is not the policy contract. Likewise, when an illustration is shared, and this will also be written on every page of an illustration from an insurance company, that it is invalid if there are not all the pages. So if you see that, okay, well this is only page 17 of however many pages, that's a clue. And it says plainly at the bottom, it's invalid. So I just got off of a phone call where it's time to have a policy illustration walkthrough with a client who's getting a couple of policies. Policy on himself, policy on a daughter, starting a system of policies to own for the purpose of implementing infinite banking. So we've had consultation calls. We've made reference to the source material. Of course, R. Nelson Nash's Becoming Your Own Banker book, the presentation video that I use, and anything else, and all the time that an individual needs to get to the point to where they're probably aware of a range of premium anyway. And once we apply for a policy based on the premium that a client wants to pay, either before we submit that application or after that application, but for sure we're going to do a policy walkthrough where we are going to look at the policy illustration before a client signs and owns and accepts a policy that's been constructed for them. And it could be we look at policy illustrations for, I'm just speaking for me and myself. I'm more than happy and typically do look at policy illustrations before starting an application. Now again, some folks will start an application to apply, and then the conversation on structure will continue. Also, it's just fine to look at policy illustrations before an application. Both of those can be great depending on the individual's understanding. But for sure, a part of my process is before a client accepts a policy, we're going to look through the policy illustration together. So the policy illustration is not the policy contract. And remember, a whole life insurance policy is a contract. You should be very aware of what is in your contract. So if you're a prospective client and you already have policies, I'm more than happy to look at what it is that you already have. And often folks will decide to keep what they already have while getting new policies that have been built for infinite banking. Likewise, folks will decide to exchange policies if that makes sense, and it doesn't always make sense. But it may make sense to exchange policies, do a 1035 exchange from one policy to another. And likewise, you may decide to cancel current policies because it ate up your insurability and you want to be able to get more policies or some mixture of the above. But again, I'm saying that because it's so relevant when discussing policy illustrations, because like I was telling the gentleman earlier today and reminding him, everyone is only allowed a certain amount of death benefit, coverage, protection, insurance, based on age and net worth and income, a a series of factors, okay? And then as we extrapolate that out to children, because this gentleman did get a policy on his daughter, there are some things that we need to bear in mind when constructing policies for that next generation that are going to be part of your entire system. And the proper structure of policies, given that you only have a certain amount of insurability, is so very important. And again, you can learn a lot by looking at policy illustrations. Now, I will also point out that in his book, Nelson's Becoming Your Own Banker book, he has said that, so he doesn't say this in the book, but he said this in person, that if he were rewriting the book, he would not have included illustrations. And there are many reasons why. One reason, perhaps the biggest, is that this is the infinite banking concept, and it's very easy to get bogged down in, well, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. Nelson showed this. Nelson illustrated that. Again, an illustration is just an example, a snapshot for an individual. And while every policy should be custom built for the individual, to have those illustrations in the books could lead someone to the wrong conclusions on policy structure that may not actually best fit their needs, their purposes. So policy illustrations are important. They have their place. Nelson would not have included them in the book, and yet it's a natural part of the process of vetting and implementing this concept. Now, something certainly needs to be said about the manipulation of inputs and variables that allow illustrations to dance virtually, okay? What I'm saying there is that, again, the illustration is not the policy itself, the contract itself. You should be familiar and aware, cognizant of the policy contract that you would like to accept. Even while the policy illustration can be informative, just understand that policy illustrations can be manipulated in a way to be deceiving, especially if they're only shown in part, or if you don't have someone guiding you through looking at and understanding. I'll give you another example. Because in a policy illustration, a company may show the same numbers in about 6 different ways. So same numbers, same policy illustration, but from about 6 different perspectives. And a client or a prospect by themselves may go to a section of the policy illustration, look at the guaranteed values, which only looks at a portion of the total policy illustration. They may see that portion and notice year 1 cash value is 0, year 2 cash value is 0, 0, and get on the phone with me or text me saying, why am I not seeing cash value? I thought this, I thought, easy there, you know. That's just one aspect of the total. If you go a few pages down, you will see that there's a significant cash value in the policy's paid up additions rider. But again, if you don't know that, it could be deceptive in that regard. Now, when I was mentioning deception a moment ago, that was from the perspective of individuals. This happens. You need to know this. There are individuals out there who will manipulate a policy in a way to illustrate, with complete disregard for Nelson's principles of thinking long range, don't be afraid to capitalize, all these different things. And perhaps, again, like I said, just be sent, a prospective client, just be sent one page that just pops. It's wow, amazing, incredible. But it doesn't show the full picture, and it certainly doesn't tell you about that company, about the dividend history, the stability of that company, the flexibility of paying premiums. Well, I mean, what are the parameters of the actual contract? Not just, wow, that's a big number that is illustrated, shown, displayed on that paper at that time, because the software allowed for it to be manipulated in that way. So I'm not trying to cause you to be fearful, merely attentive and aware. So as for myself, I don't sell from the illustration. I educate on the fact that you can become your own banker by owning properly structured whole life policies from mutual companies that pay dividends as entities that build your private family banking system. And again, there's a time to see a policy illustration once you're aware enough of the concepts. I love this saying from James Nethery. He says, when you understand the concepts, the details don't matter. And when you don't understand the concepts, the details don't matter. I hope you heard me on that. When you understand the concepts, think long range. Don't be afraid to capitalize. Be an honest banker. When you understand these principles and the process of infinite banking, the concepts of control and profitability, keeping your money, the details don't matter. I'm not saying, and he's not saying, that they don't matter at all, but in comparison to the concepts, they don't matter. You've got to start with the foundation first. So let me reiterate that structure is so very important. You should be aware of what you have, why you have it. I say that policies should be built for the individual. The illustration is not the place to start when understanding or implementing infinite banking, and yet it has its place. Another note when it comes to policy illustrations is I would encourage you each year, if you're a current client, or you don't have to work with me, but if you own policies for infinite banking, I would encourage you to get on your anniversary date, after your anniversary date, get an update in force policy illustration so that you can keep tabs on, especially if you've been paying extra premiums and such. You're using the policy. Get an update in force policy illustration. You should be able to call your company and request that. You should be able to log in online and have that sent to your email so that you can see your updated information, your updated values, death benefit, cash value, dividends, etc. If you'd like the opportunity to speak directly with me, perhaps work directly with me, you can contact me at durhamtalents.com, where I work one-on-one with my clients all across the country to help them live and leave a lasting legacy. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. If you have comments or questions, feel free to put those below. I hope you have a great day.